Yes, people, Manscaped is back, but this time it's not for below the belt grooming. Manscaped brings to you the Beard Hedger, the best product on the market when it comes to beard trimmers. The Beard Hedger is unique due to its number of gradient settings. As someone who's purchased this, I won't turn to any other beard trimmer. Check it out for yourself at manscaped.com. And don't forget to use code FTM20 to get 20% off of this product.
Yes, people, we are back. 12th Man is back. That means that this show is all about Arsenal one-on-one with Northside earlier. Please make sure you go check that one out. And this will be a very different one with a great, great friend of the show and of myself from the Hybrid Squad. It's Sophie over in the States. How you doing, darling? You all right?
I'm doing well, Dan. How are you this fine summer's day?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I mean, it's not really sunny where we are, but it looks lovely where you are. So that's always a good thing as far as you're concerned. But just before we do proper intros and get everybody involved, how are you finding it over there?
Yeah, good. Well, as you know, I live in Calafiori, Nia. I'm valiantly pushing Calafiori Dreaming as his song. But naturally, everyone wants to go for an Italian song, which I get. But I'm going to keep pushing. Fergus told me I got no chance. So, but no, it's nice. It was great yesterday. It was really good tonic to be around all of these amazing Gooners. Not only the Arsenal America group. And by the way, well done to Magic Mike for raising over $4,000 just last night alone for the Gooners v Cancer charity. You had all the big hitters there, the Podfather himself, Andrew, a.k.a. Arsblog, James, Gunnerblog was there, Clive, Elliot from Arsenal Vision. You had the boys from AFTV, lead judges getting up to no good as per usual. So, yeah, it was really, really nice. Jessica Black was there. And, you know, all the different members from all the branches of Arsenal America, Tiffany, who's been organizing a lot of this, did a brilliant interview with Theo Walcott, which you could go catch. Ran into Gilberto and Theo in the car park, and it was nice to kind of visit with them for a little bit. It was nice talking about Super Kev with Theo for just a few minutes. So yeah, it's really comforting. I could have used an Arsenal hug and seeing everyone, and then seeing some of the young players as well. It's always a good time. We know that the real business starts in August, Dan, and this is all about getting players fit together and giving them time to gel and find themselves again. But overall, a very good start to the preseason.
Yes, and it sounds like you're buzzing for it, and absolutely. I will say, I am very jealous. I wanted to go over there maybe next season. I was going to try to get there this year. It's never going to happen with everything that's been going on my end and trying to sort the channel out full time and out on stuff. It was never going to happen for me. So, yeah, maybe next time. But listen, people, do me a favor. Make sure you head over to Hybrid Squad. All you've got to do is click the link in the title. It takes you straight to Hybrid Squad. They're literally only not even 100 away from 16K. So let's get Sophie up to 16K tonight, people. All you've got to do is click the subscribe button, and it's free. So honestly, I don't know why people don't do it. It's so hard, isn't it? Just ask someone to do something for free,
I know.
and they just still takes forever. So please make sure you hit the like button, which is free, the subscribe button, which is free, and go and do that over at the Hybrid Squad as well. There we go. Please make sure you check out the pinned comment for Manscaped. Yes, that was me trying to act, but it's for the Beard Hedger. And of course, you get 20% off. So all you got to do is click that link. The 20% will come off the Beard Hedger automatically. All you need to do is select Beard Hedger, go to checkout, and you'll see that 20% has come off. So please make sure that you go and check that out and support the sponsors of the show. Now, Sophie, let's talk the news that's come out in the last few minutes. Well, not minutes, I'd say probably hours now. It feels like minutes, doesn't it? Fabian Ruiz is being heavily linked with Arsenal. Now, when that started to occur, me and you were actually on Tom Canton's show on the Gooner Talk. Big up to him. And you said something really interesting. You said that's got Premier League flop written all over it. So I want to kind of delve into that a little bit more in a minute. But let's just share the news first of all, because it has broke for a few different sources, but one in particular. Now, I'm not massively aware of this source. I don't know how reliable it is. I don't know if it's the one that people go to, but Duncan Castles over at the Sunday Times suggests that Arsenal have initiated discussions with PSG for Fabian Ruiz. The discussions are dependent, I'm told, on Arsenal moving a player out in midfield. It's likely, if they're to come to an agreement, that it will be structured as a loan with an obligation to buy. Now, I think the asking price, if you go on transfer market, is around 35 to 40 million pounds. So for me, it's definitely something that we could afford. It's not like an unaffordable signing. Now, there is obviously breaking news earlier from Romano that João Neves is on his way to PSG. So this might have some legs now. All of a sudden, it's starting to be pieced together a little bit. We've talked about previously on shows with other guests about domino effects and where players are potentially going to be playing and what might happen in terms of signings. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because the interesting part there, well, there's two interesting parts there, is the fact that it's a loan with an obligation to buy. So it would be similar to a David Raya type deal if it was to be something we're interested in. But the bit I'm looking at is an Arsenal player moving out of midfield. Now, we're so short already, Sophie, in midfield. We've literally got Rice, Partey, and Jorginho. That is it. So those are going out, and Fabian Ruiz is coming in. I'd like to think we're not just getting one in midfield this summer. But what's your thoughts on that rumour?
Yeah. Before I get to the rumor, do you feel like Fabio Vieira is going to get a chance to be more involved? He was injured for the best part of last season. Last night, it seemed he was very engaged in the game. I posted something where he wanted to chat with Mikel Arteta about something tactically, of course, just as the water break was ending, and Arteta was very engaged with him. It feels to me that maybe this is the last chance saloon for him. I know you and I haven't been convinced. There definitely seems to be a talent in there. I remember actually Emil Smith-Rowe talking about him when he faced Portugal for England in the under-21 championships, and he was so impressed with Fabio Vieira. This is the cautionary tale, isn't it, of young players who may be good at that level but can't step up to the next level. So I don't know if you feel like he's going to get a chance, regardless of whether or not he does. We need, I think, more steel in the midfield if we don't want to burn out Declan Rice. And the good thing, I know I joked, and this is probably going to come back to haunt me, that comment forever and ever, isn't it? I like the idea of the Raya type deal, because there is something about certain players. I don't know. I joked it's like my Columbo, detective hunch or vibe, that is he the type of player that can make it in the Premier League? And that's not me saying the Premier League is superior to any other league. It's just more competitive. It's harsher, more robust. And yes, he had a decent Euros. You know what I think it is, Dan? I like the idea of the deal with a view to buy, because we're not overly committing the dollars in a time where we need to be really cautious about how we spend those dollars or euros. And maybe I'm being a little bit hard on it, because PSG, I always feel like this overloading of PSG players has been happening season over season. The desperation for PSG to win the Champions League because Mbappe deserves it, or it's some divine right that a player like him would covet that just because. So maybe if I'm putting all my cards on the table, maybe it's because of how I felt about PSG over the last 2 or 3 years, who've underperformed in Europe, who kind of have failed at major opportunities they've had to further themselves in Europe and win. And so maybe that's where it comes from. There are 2 other Spanish midfielders that I would prefer over him. However, at his age, with his versatility, because he can play all 3 roles in midfield, can't he? And I think that he's that type of player that is difficult to find. So if the price is right, I totally understand. It makes sense with an outgoing midfielder from us. But for me, in this case, it's proceed with caution. And maybe I'm just being a little bit hard on it because of how I feel about PSG.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why you feel like that about PSG. I think there's a lot of other people that share that as well with yourself. But I will say that I actually was really impressed with him in the Euros. And we were linked with him at Napoli. And he went to PSG and he started to play well with Vitinha. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, he's not now playing. And he's no longer in the PSG first team. Why is that? They're looking to get rid of him. They're looking to bring players in and completely revamp it. And then when he went into the Spain midfield and like, let's be real. Okay, he is with Rodri, he is with Olmo, he is with Williams, he's with Marino, of course, and Yamal. So, of course, they're good players around him.
Hmm.
But I kind of got more excited about that, Soph, because he will be surrounded by better players. He will be with Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice. So I think that could be a really good bit of business for Arsenal. And if you're talking about him not actually costing any money until the following season, and even when we decide if we're going to go and get him at 35 to 38 million pounds, if you're going to put that sort of money on Fabio Vieira, who I'll touch on and answer your question in a minute, then surely this is a bargain, right? And I think Marino could still come in alongside Fabian Ruiz as well. And then you've got kind of two options there in midfield alongside Declan Rice, and you've got Partey and Jorginho, where, let's be real, I don't expect them to pay Partey 15, 20 games tops the season, likewise Jorginho. So you start to strengthen that up and bolster it, because Arsenal, one, have got a real kind of, let's be real, paper thin midfield at the moment, but also it ain't very future proof. And what I mean by that is Partey and Jorginho are off next season. Their contracts are done. Like, they're 31 and 33 years old, I believe. So they're not going to be here for the long term. Now, I know that Ruiz and Marino aren't young. They're 28, but they've got 4 or 5 years in midfield if they want it at Arsenal there. So that's what I would say. To answer your question quickly on Fabi Vieira, I don't know why we're sticking around with this, like waiting for this to work. Personally, like for me, mate, it ain't going to work. And I'll tell you why it isn't going to work. It's not because he's a shambles of a player. It's not because he hasn't got a wand of a left foot, great weight of pass and superb technique with his left foot. It's because he's weak and he's not a very strong player as well as being lightweight. Now, I know many footballers that are lightweight, but they were quite strong. Lionel Messi is one of them. He didn't not suit leagues because he was too lightweight. He was strong. I look at Mahrez. He was quite lightweight, but he was strong. Saka, he's quite lightweight, but he's strong. And he's just not. He's lightweight and weak. And unfortunately, when you're that much of a featherweight, you're going to go down, aren't you, quite easily? And I think this is too tough of a league for him. He can go down the gym as much as he wants, but some people just haven't got it, and he ain't. And that's why I think we should try to move him on. I was listening to Robbie today, and he was saying that apparently Saudi Arabia and some other clubs are very much interested in talking about taking on Vieira, and Arteta has said absolutely no way, he's not for sale. So Arteta clearly sees that he's got something in him. But then my question would be, so why hasn't he been playing him then? Like, why has he not been trusting this guy,
Well, a couple of things there. And by the way, I get what you're saying about Fabian, the Napoli player, because I think that's the player that Arsenal fans are excited about, because he was very good. And also now kind of perhaps the Euros reintroduced what he's capable of doing.
Yes.
You bring up a really great point about you can play well when you're surrounded by, Williams and Yamin Lamal and Rodri and Zubimendi and all these players. And I think there's validity to that, because similarly, other than the overhead kick, Jude Bellingham did not have a great Euros, but he played exceptionally well in his first season at Real Madrid. He's surrounded by who? Incredible players. Who you play with matters a lot. And so I think, the NFL quarterback position, you could be a brilliant quarterback, but if your wide receivers are shit and your tight end is shit, you're not doing shit. And so it matters in sports where you end up and who you play with. So I totally understand what you're saying about that. Now, with regards to Vieira, you bring up another great point. There was a moment last night, even though he scored, and I actually thought he had a decent game. He put himself about and got himself in really good positions, was generally good with the ball. However, there was one moment in particular where he had possession of the ball and he totally got muscled off it. He fell like a feather. And that's always been the argument I have regarding him. There were a lot of fans where he scored a wonder goal and you get behind him and you think he's going to be the answer. He's going to be that kind of superstar young player with the flair that we all want him to be. 35 million is a lot of money and there's been no ROI on that so far. And I did see that last night, that he gets pushed around very, very easily. But it does appear, and I might be wrong, that he's going to get his shot this year. And let's face it, Dan, our starting 11 is superb. And you actually have a couple of players who really are like for like if someone in the starting 11 needs to be subbed or goes down. Now we've rectified that with Calafiori. God forbid something happened to Gabriel, Saliba or Timber, at left back. I think the right back position, Timber's versatile. He can play pretty much anywhere along that line. But the right back position for me, Tomiyasu's unreliable. Yes, there's Kivior, but that's a bit of a concern. And then you look at like Trossard, Martinelli, even Jesus on that side. You'd be happy with any one of those three players starting a game in the Premier League next season. The side of Saka, after seeing Waneri play last night, I feel pretty confident that he's going to get his Lamal moment. 17 years old. He was the best player on the pitch last night. We need Saka to be rested. He can't play every single game. So in the midfield, though, it's worrying because you don't have that closeness to Rice. You don't have that closeness to Odegaard. Jorginho, I think, is about the best other option that we have. And I think he'll have a much longer career than Thomas Partey, and he's more durable than Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey looked, after the first 15 minutes last night, he looked so slow. I actually felt like, wow, he was a shadow of himself, right? Again, it's preseason. However, he's not been great. And we keep falling in love with the few good games that he plays when he comes back from injury. So my concern is getting the players, because that's what City do. Haaland can't play, Alvarez goes on. Grealish can't play or Doku can't play, they go on. Look at, the back line as well. Yeah. They have as the best like for like type players. And that's the difference that we're going to have to make up, Dan. And the Spanish players we link to, I think potentially can do that. But do they get you over the line and bring you that elusive Premier League title? I don't know.
I mean, listen, there's a lot that I agree with there. So I actually agree with a lot, if not all of what you've said. I will say this, the Fabio Vieira thing, I think we've done to death, if I'm honest. And I think we've kind of appreciated that perhaps Arteta and Edu saw something over in Portugal that they likened to Bernardo Silva potential. They likened to an assist king. He got 14, 15 assists for Porto. I would argue that we probably missed the wrong midfielder and we should have gone for Vitinha. But still, we went for Fabio Vieira. Now, he's not been able to come in the last 2 seasons and get a first team place. He was a lot of money. And at the moment, he's going to go down as a miss and probably one of the worst signings that they've made because of the value of it. It doesn't mean he's going to be a flop this season. We've got to give him the chance to prove that. And it looks like Mikel Arteta is going to do that. But I'm with you. The other areas, more defensively, is a bit of a worry. Now, he's extremely durable, Declan Rice. But if he does go, even if it's for a couple of weeks and get injured, who the hell plays in the 8? We're going to have to play Vieira there, or we're going to have to play Havertz back there. They ain't good enough. Now, don't get me wrong. Somebody will hopefully come in, right? But I wanted to ask you as a whole in that midfield there, when that window shuts, what is going to make, what is that, the scenario in your head to make you go, oh, okay, cool. No, I get it now. I'm happy. I'm happy with that. Are we talking 2? Are we talking 1-6? Are we talking 1-8? Are we talking everybody stays plus 2 more? Like, did you see what I'm saying? What does it look like to you?
That's a great question. And I truly believe, and I know so many fans want a striker, right? But I think the midfield is the missing piece. And of course, a prolific striker too, because strikers make up those differences. You have a prolific striker, you don't miss chances against Aston Villa, you don't miss chances against Bayern Munich. But with that same token, we've had players across the flanks and in the midfield who get goals, right? Defense, best defensive record. The midfield for me, as I've been noodling on this and talking to you and Tom over the last couple of days and chatting with some of the guys at the tailgate yesterday, I think the midfield is the missing link to winning the title. And if we don't address that, because the argument, where do you think Declan Rice should be playing? Some people don't think he's an 8. Some people don't think he's a 6. Some people think, do we really have the box-to-box midfield, the Steven Gerrard, the Frank Lampard type, that where you're going to get goals from midfield, but multiple goals? Frank Lampard's Chelsea's record scorer, and he's been scoring goals from midfield. And so for me, it's like, what does Arteta really want? And I don't know if I'm going to know it until I see it. Because last season, I think we got away with it a little bit. And we were on a roll. And, I think that our back line kept at bay a lot what was happening in that area sometimes, the way we kind of push up. So I don't know if I know the answer to that until I see it. You can't rely on Thomas Partey. You can't rely on Fabio Vieira. You don't want to run Rice and Odegaard into the ground. Odegaard is just the most special player, so gifted, technically brilliant, can break defenses open. Declan Rice, I don't want him to become the jack of all trade and master of none. What is his best position to play? And the good thing about him is he'll play anywhere Arteta tells him to. So I believe there is a gap in the midfield, and that's the missing link to really, truly challenging for the title. I don't want to hear people talking about us winning the Champions League. I'd love a domestic cup, but our third year now, I fear that other teams will catch up to us if we don't make it happen this season. I really believe that Manchester United will carry on buying, investing better players, having more of a plan with their new ownership. Liverpool will continue to evolve under a new manager. And people can poo-poo what I'm saying about Man United, but Mikel Arteta was given a chance early on by a lot of Arsenal fans, Dan. And I couldn't see it at the beginning.
Man United will be back. Couple of years, they'll be back. I promise you they will.
Ten Hag be given the same grace. He's won 2 domestic trophies. He's been in the job 2 years. They finished, we did 8th and then challenged. Who's to say they can't do that this season or next season?
If he doesn't, he'll just be gone. They're ruthless, these people. It's not about, Man United will be back because Ten Hag will get time. It's because these are footballing men that will put him in charge. And mate, look, who's to say Ten Hag with a structure and with a good footballing men behind him doesn't start moving forward with Manchester United. I honestly think in a couple of years, Manchester United will be title challenging. I don't think that they've never not spent money. They've just spent it in the wrong areas, right? They've had no plan. They've had no understanding, no structure, no togetherness, no team. They've got footballing men in charge. You want them to, listen, Arteta and Edu deserve a lot of plaudits, but you wouldn't take them over these guys. These Man United guys are serious, mate. Trust me. Dan Ashworth, Barada, you see what he's done at Man City. Look at what Jason Wilcox is known for. Look at what Jim Ratcliffe has got vision-wise for. I think Man United are going to be back in a couple of years. Like the transfer window, what's that, 4 windows? They're going to spend ridiculous amount of money as they have in each one. Yeah, mate, we can't hang about. This has got to be now. And it doesn't mean that Man United are going to go take it off Arsenal. It means that it's going to be harder because 3 or maybe 4 teams are going to be fighting for it, right? Arsenal will still be there. To answer your question, though, about Declan Rice, what do I see? I think we might be missing something here, right? I was thinking about this only earlier. A lot of people are very confused about what Arsenal might need. Do we need a 6? Do we need an 8? Do we need both? If we're going to play that system, 6, 8, 10, Partey, Rice, Odegaard, we need a 6 and an 8, right? That's what I think. Because I honestly believe Declan Rice in the 8, and then you go and buy your 6, don't know who it is, throw a name at me that is a defensive midfielder, and then you go and get someone to back up Declan Rice. But actually, I don't see a number 6 that's going to come in and be better than Thomas Partey that's available, unless you go and get someone like a De Jong or a Bruno or Barella or someone mad that is just not going to be realistic, right? The 8s, however, I do see potentially Marino, Fabian Ruiz. Some people have even said that Eze could play in that role. It might be that we change the system a bit. And what I mean by that is we might not go for a 6 and an 8. We might go for a double pivot next season with Odegaard in front of it. So we might go for a Declan Rice and a Fabian Ruiz with an Odegaard in front of it. funny enough, what Rodri, Ruiz, and Olmo did for Spain, right? We might see that. We might look at a different system now and go, Odegaard's the 10, but we've got Declan Rice and Ruiz behind it. We've got Marino who can come into that. Partey and Jorginho can both play in that double pivot, as they have done last season at times. I wonder if Mikel Arteta might change it up a little bit, because that one makes more sense in my head than trying to find 2 6s, 2 8s, and 2 10s. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, he likes to stick to his guns, doesn't he? And he's not very, I say this with respect, versatile in. There's been times where we've been asking, what's the plan B? And I used to argue with Kev about this all the time. He goes, he's making subs. And I'm like, no, there's making subs and there's switching gears. Do you remember that conversation that we had?
I do. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah. So I don't know, but all I know is that Odegaard and Declan Rice played a lot and seemed absolutely spent at the end of the season. And the players that we're talking about that played for Spain are really gifted players, right? Marino, for me in particular, you mentioned Olmo, he was superb. I thought one of their best players in the tournament. And that's exactly the type of quality, elevated quality that we need. Because let's be honest, okay, we're holding Rice at this pedestal and he's brilliant and he's amazing. But Arteta says himself, the goal is to elevate every year, every year, every year. I would say right now, Rice doesn't have any competition. Odegaard doesn't have any competition. Saka doesn't have any competition. Kai Havertz, if he's going to be the number 9, doesn't really have any competition. The most competitive position right now is that left side with Martinelli, Trossard, and Jesus, who can play on the right, but he's not going to knock Saka off a starting 11 team in the league. Maybe the Champions League if he wants to be rested. There's really no competition at right back. The 2 centre backs are the best pairing for me in the league, so I'm not so worried about that. And the left back position, yes, might be competitive, but when everybody's fit, because Zinchenko's injury prone. Jurriën Timber's coming back from a terrible injury.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to see if he can last the course in the league. Kivior, he just seems to be out of favour after the horror show against Bayern Munich at the Emirates, which I think is a little bit unfair. But again, he couldn't step up to that next level to take us to that next point. He's not that kind of player. Zinchenko injury, Tomiyasu. So I still think we've got a job to do when it comes to keeping that competitiveness, having no complacency, but having the same quality that can come in and challenge some of these players to keep it going. It is hard to go so close for 2 seasons, Dan, and not win it. David Hillier said on our show, he goes, third year, oof, he goes, it's going to be tough. And I think it's going to be a little bit tougher than we think this season.
Yeah, listen, you've spoken a lot there about how exhausting it can be. And listen, we're going to move to incomings and outgoings. And I want to get your thoughts on the Bournemouth game because obviously you were there and I wasn't. I got to only see the highlights. So I'd be interested to know that. Maybe we'll do that as we close. But look, we're going to get some sales for sure. So if I don't think we're going to see incomings before we see outgoings, if that makes sense. And I'd kind of discount Calafiori in that because it feels like that's been going on for about 8 years. It's going to get done, right? So once he brings Calafiori in, it looks like we're going to get rid of 3 Howenders. Now, Emil Smith-Rowe looks to be on his way to Fulham. Wasn't part of yesterday, or should I say earlier on, playing against Bournemouth. Obviously, Eddie Nketiah linked with a move to Marseille, and Reece Nelson moved to Leicester with a loan with an obligation, we believe, for around £20 million. We might as well talk about them as a free. Does this leave a bit of a sour taste in your mouth, or are you quite happy to see them all go and have careers elsewhere? Is it good money? Talk to me about it.
So, for me, I think that, again, and I may start sounding like a broken record on the show tonight, is do they take Arsenal to the next level to win the league? Because we've shown we can be competitive, right? And of course, you've got to be competitive. But now we're talking about winning the damn thing. And do they help you achieve that goal? There was a time when Emil Smith-Rowe and Saka were carrying this team on their shoulders. I mentioned on Tom's show the 3-0 demolition of Tottenham by the half at the Emirates. where they slide on the carpet and that picture will be indelible forever. Brilliant, right? But we didn't have pieces around us. It's the same thing when we had Santi, Mesut, and Alexis. We never built a strong team around them up front or at the back. Wasted talent. There's nothing worse than wasted talent. But Emil Smith-Rowe, I'm a little bit worried. Does he have the Jack Wilshere injury proneness, right? And every player can suffer from injuries. There's certain players that get injuries frequently and at inopportune times, and there's nothing anybody can do about that. He's got massive career ahead of him if he can stay fit. And when he came back from the injury, something told me that there was something Mikel didn't see about him in training. There were even some murmurs about maybe him not pulling his weight. However, we don't know that, and we don't even know if that's true, right? But a player can come back differently and he could struggle, and maybe it's because physically he couldn't and he was struggling. So to get 35 million for an injury-prone player who started in the academy is a good deal. I call it the Iwobi deal, right? I think that's good business. At some point, we've got to cut the umbilical cord. We're attached to these Haaland players, but not everyone's a Saka. Eddie Nketiah last night had a few chances, and I'm sorry, I just don't see it. I've never seen it. And I'm not being disrespectful, but he's just not at that level. He came in at a time when Jesus was injured and saved us for a couple of months in Jesus's first season. We were all horrified when he went down because he was so infectious and explosive, when he came into the team. But Eddie can't do it over a long period of time. And he's proven he can't do it as a super sub either because he's been given a lot of chances. You and Tom were talking about how Reece Nelson maybe didn't get as many chances. And he has had amazing moments. The Bournemouth goal would be known forever and ever. But is he going to take... I can see him. You mentioned Leicester when we were talking earlier. I can see him being a star at a team like West Ham, Leicester, Crystal Palace. But I don't think he takes Arsenal to the next level.
I think that is his level, you think? Yeah.
So cut the umbilical cord, make the money, reinvest it to make us, as close to City to try and win this league as possible.
So, yeah, I do agree. And, I've got to ask because there's a lot of talk about these three going. There's a lot of talk about Tierney and Ramsdale and potentially others that might have futures up in the air at the moment. I think once these outgoings do go through, I do think we'll get some incomings. And we've spoken about midfield, though I don't want to go into that. Calafiori's coming in. You've spoken previously about your thoughts on him. Defensively, we've got good cover in Timber now and Tomiyasu. But there is the massive question mark, Soph, about what do we do if Saka gets injured and who plays there? And do we need a striker? And I think they're the only two other positions that we'd be looking at potentially. Now, I'd love to get your thoughts on both of those positions, first of all. And then if Smith-Rowe is going to go, you mentioned him earlier, is Wanieri going to be the guy that is replacing Smith-Rowe? Or do we might need to look at an Eze to come in and potentially cover maybe Odegaard and Saka? What's your thoughts, mate?
So football's changing and evolving. In MLS last week, we saw a 14-year-old make his debut in Philadelphia. 14 years old, making a professional debut. We have seen Spain, the emergence of a young superstar who was, always destined maybe to be that, but you've got to prove that you can play and take on the pressure at that level. My goodness, did he take on the pressure at that level? Made goals, made, mature, experienced defenders and midfielders look average at times. If a player is good enough, they can play. Now, I always also say, my God, 14-year-old was a bit young for me, but Ethan's 17 and physically he looks very robust, looks like a strong lad, but also very talented. Now, are you going to throw a 17-year-old into the mix next season? I think yes, at times where they're warranted, right? I would like to see him And you and I were talking about the domestic cups, and
Yeah.
there were some comments in the YouTube after we did that show. We're like, well, Dan wants us to be competitive, but rotation, and the argument about rotation versus being competitive. In the domestic cups, it's the same thing. If you've got players who have quality, maybe you can go on to win a cup. But if you're just bringing in kids randomly or bringing in players who just aren't competitive, it's not going to happen. So I do think, like Saka was given the opportunity by Emery and Emile Smith-Rowe, that Waneri can come in and play against teams to give Saka a rest. I think he's a really good player. And last night for me was the best player on the pitch. I don't know how you feel about that, but Saka has played a lot of football over the last 3 years, Dan. It's crazy. It's craziness how much he's played.
It's too much. It's too much. And I love the kid, man. I absolutely love him. I mean, look at him in the Euros as well. One of England's best players, goes all the way to the final, plays pretty much every minute of every single game. The kid's durable, but he's 22. He ain't going to be durable at 26 if he continues to play this many games. Now, I don't know why we haven't tried to play Gabriel Jesus out there more, because I actually prefer him on the wide position. I think he's a much better winger than he is a number 9, but he hasn't gone for that for whatever reason. But that's the position that would worry me. Now, Waneri, I hear great things about him. I've heard great things about him for a while. I don't know if loan is the right move for him or if he stays and he is the next Smith-Rowe. There's a lot of pressure on him, for sure, if there is going to be that. But he seems like a kid who's got a hell of a lot of confidence. And something that stuck with me was, I think it was Judges yesterday said that he gave the ball away, couldn't care, just cracked on, got on with it, moved it forward, the ball to the next time and improved the next time. There's something about his attitude that I like, and there's something about the style of his play that I quite like. Now, it sounds weird because you go for a title with a 17-year-old as your backup number 10. It doesn't sound very nice, but if you're good enough, you're old enough, Soph, right? So, Fabregas was in an Invincible side at 17. We had Robin van Persie, who was extremely young when he came onto the scene in the Invincibles. We've had young players before that have gone through at Arsenal and done it. And I always say we normally get one every decade. And I said this earlier, I think, to Northside, that in the 90s, we kind of got lucky and we had a couple in the Rocky and Tony Adams era. We went to the 2000s with Ashley Cole, the 2010s with Jack Wilshere. Now we're in the 2020s with Saka. We're kind of ready soon to see who's going to be the next guy, right? And maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But I do believe there's something special about this kid that I really do quite like. But I also, at the same time, think it is an absolute no-brainer Eze to Arsenal. It just makes sense. Like, he started with us. He left our academy at 12 years old. There's rumours he's always liked to probably come back and see what he could do at Arsenal. He's 26, so he's not a 22-year-old anymore. He's got a lot of versatility. He can cover for Ødegaard. He can cover for Saka. I think he could play in that left 8 role. He could definitely play on the left wing, although we've seemed to have about 3 or 4 of them now. I think personally that would be an absolute no-brainer. And that, for me, doesn't just replace Smith-Rowe, it actually upgrades on him. As much as I love Smith-Rowe, he's not done what Eze's done. And Eze has been consistent in that Palace side, and he's been balling out and got himself into the England squad, which Smith-Rowe hasn't been able to do. So I don't know what your thoughts are on Eze. Is that a player that you like?
I like him a lot. I'm a huge fan. And I think, he and Elise are joy to watch play football. And I think it says a lot when you watch a London team. You always want to see him lose. Those two players, when you watch them play, you enjoy watching them. And he is versatile for sure. He's been playing and has been a star in a Crystal Palace team. Now, I'm not saying he has an ego or anything like that, but when you've been a star in a team and you've been one of the number 1 guys, are you prepared to come and be a backup to the number 1 guy? Jesus is a little bit different there because he was used to that culture at Manchester City. Same with Zinchenko. And I agree with you about Jesus being able to be a backup for Saka on the right. I mean, he played more on the flanks at Manchester City and did really well there. He's not a prolific goal scorer. Came in as our striker, but he offers so much more to the team. And I think we're a better team with Jesus in it, a fit Jesus. So Eze, as much as I would love him, do you think that he would be willing to play that type of role? If you want to be with a more competitive team, you don't have to move too far away from home. You're playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world. Yes, but there are other elements to a footballer and his decisions, and it's not always as easy as that, right? When you've been the number one guy at a club for quite some time.
I mean, listen, Gabriel Jesus, I said it on one of my morning shows the other day and on one of my TikToks. I honestly believe out of everybody, this is probably the most important season for him out of all of the players, because you can look at Fabio Vieira and say, oh, it's a big year for him because he needs to try and stay at the club. But I think Fabio Vieira will actually be okay if he moves on again somewhere. He'll probably go back to Portugal or La Liga and he'll probably be okay. Gabriel Jesus, I don't see what happens to him after Arsenal, because he's not been able to get in the number 9 position at Man City. He's not been able to get in the number 9 position at Arsenal. I don't know if he'd be able to actually play at number 9, where clearly he wants to play, for one of the other top clubs and be their regular starter, because he can't prove to get more than between 10 and 12 goals. And that's great. But that's great if you're a Brentford striker or a Wolves striker, and he doesn't want to be that level. So I worry for him if he doesn't work for him this season. Now, I like him as a footballer. I think he's fantastic to watch. But he's not a killer in the box. He's not clinical enough. He's definitely not a 9. So,
Dan, has Mikel convinced him, though, that he isn't that guy? I think that Jesus, call me crazy, if he stays fit, will be one of our most important players next season.
wow, I hope so.
I believe he will go back to the form in his first season. He's been able to take care of these niggly injuries that he's had.
I hope so.
You know, he's kind of, you could feel his confidence was so low when he self-admitted that, you know, about his goal scoring lack thereof. You felt that that was a comment coming from a player who had lost a little bit of confidence. But I feel going into this season, if he accepts that role, and let's all be honest, Havertz is much better in the number 9 role. He adds a physicality, shithousery, and a little bit extra. And no one wants to see Havertz in midfield. But I can see Jesus being a sub for, or you know, mixing it up with Saka, mixing it up on the left. And I think he can offer those things. After Arsenal, he can make a shit ton of money and go to Saudi.
Yeah.
You know, he can do that. And who would begrudge him of that?
No, absolutely not. And I think that, if I'm honest with you, I think that is his next move after Arsenal anyway. But, you know, it might just be a bit sooner if things don't work out for him. But I honestly do believe, like, there's the potential, like, to see a couple of system changes this season. Because I mentioned earlier about the midfield thing and like the 68, the 10, maybe we'll go back to double pivot in some games. But I also spoke to Tom the other day, and Tom made a really good point. And it was like, what happens if Odegaard gets injured? Who comes in for him? Is it Vieira? If Smith-Rowe's not there, is it Wanyeri? Is it a player we bring in? But he said, why don't we go back to a double pivot and have Havertz and Jesus up top, playing one off of each other? And that kind of made sense in my mind, you know? So there is other options I think that Mikel Arteta might have, you know, in tools in his armory, so to speak. Whether we'll see that or not, I mean, this is me, Tom. I mean, Tom talking like out loud, you know. So probably won't be something that he's thought of. But I do think that there's definitely players that we've got in the squad now that can be versatile enough to try and play in a number of positions. I just don't really understand why Saka has played that amount of football. Because for me, when Reece Nelson was there and wasn't used, Fabi Vieira was there and wasn't used, Jesus was there and wasn't used, I kind of get frustrated with Arteta a bit. I'm like, you are so lucky that this kid is durable, because if he wasn't, my God, would you be in trouble, Arteta? Because you've played this kid for the best part of 3 years in every single game now. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah, trust is a big thing for Arteta. And he trusts Saka probably more than any other player on the team.
Yeah, yeah.
And as much as I love Odegaard and he's incredible, and Saliba, he had to grow to trust Saliba. He's trusted Saka from the get-go. He's his guy. It's the same thing with Southgate. He's a player you can absolutely trust. And Saka was the best player for England at the Euros. And if only the other players were up to his standards during that tournament, they probably could have won it, right? So trust is massive. And I believe that before his injuries, Arteta trusted Jesus. And we're very quick to dismiss players as fans, aren't we? Zinchenko makes mistakes. I want him out. You know, I think it's proven now to maybe be a little bit cautious with how we toss players aside after the Xhaka experience. No one saw that coming. No one saw that comeback redemption arc for Xhaka. Everybody was ready to sell him.
Yep.
And in the end, fans wanted him to stay another season. So hold the mayo and the mustard on throwing some of these players, to the wolves. Jesus deserves another shot. And I think he's been poor because he's had to struggle with injuries. After next season, you know what? I'll put my hands up and say you guys were right. He's not up to that same quality, which is the reason why we bought him. And the same thing with Zinchenko. I'm not saying Zinchenko should start, but he's a decent player to come off the bench if you need to hold the ball, keep the ball, for me. So I just think Arteta trusts few players. And that's one of the things you talked about on Get Off the Potsy. You've got to trust your squad.
Yeah.
So you need to get players in that you can show that same trust to. Otherwise, we won't be able to win the title. We just won't.
Facts. And listen, it's about having a squad, right? Because for me, we've had 14 players for the last 3 seasons, so really, or maybe the last 2 anyway. We need 19, 20. Like Man City have got. You mentioned earlier that there's players like their equivalents of Wanyeri. They've got Rico Lewis and Oscar Bob. They've played them before, but they don't sit on their bench like every single game waiting to get a go because they're trying to get on that bench. We need to allow Ethan Wanyeri and Lewis Skelly to be like, oh, wow, boss, any chance I get on that bench? Not at the moment, mate. Oh, there's an injury. Now you can. That's what we need it to be. We don't look at them going, oh, there's Lewis Skelly and Wanyeri again warming up. Like they need to, and I'm not got anything wrong with that, by the way, but that can't be every game. We need to have our bench looking like Tomiyasu. Okay, that's looking good. Timber on the bench. Wow. Partey on the bench. Brilliant. Trossard on the bench. Martinelli on the bench. Jesus, Havertz, both on the bench. Wow. This is looking like a squad again now. That's what we need the Arsenal to be, yeah? That bench needs to be like, do you know what? Actually, I'm actually looking forward to the subs coming on here because we've got some impact players now that can change the system, that can impact the game, that can give us a different dimension. That's what I need that to be. The only way we get that is where we get a few players in, which I think we will do. So 100%. Let me just bring up a couple of super chats. AFC Limi says, I say we sell him now. Talk about Jesus. Atletico are looking for a number 9. I don't think Jesus is going to go anywhere. I from what I hear, they're quite excited about how fit he's looking and how his knee's better now and how they're really relying on him. So let's see what he's like in pre-season. And Godfrey is a new member. If you would like to be a member of the channel, then hit like, hit subscribe, click join, and you can pay a very minimal fee to support the content and the channel. So please make sure that you do that. And how many likes are we on, people? There's 400 people in here. There's 164
Dan,
likes. Let's get it up to 200, please. Go on.
Can you ask your super chat, what's the price? What's the price to walk away from Jesus? And what do you get in return? It's all well and good throwing out these, got to sell them, got to get rid of them. I love to challenge the listeners too and say, okay, what price and what do you replace that type of player with?
I think it's a great question. If you're still in the chat, AFC Limi, and you know what? Let's put the chat out there. Everyone, just say how much would you sell Jesus for? Is the question. Just throw numbers in the chat. We'll talk about it. Make sure you do me a favor, people. Make sure you hit the like. Let's get up to 200 likes. Make sure you click on Highbury Squad in the title and go and subscribe to them. We need to get them up to 16k tonight. So please make sure that you do that as well. We're getting 50 million, 45 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million. Wow, I wouldn't go as low as 30, but 50 million, I've been saying yes. If Saudi come in and say 50 million, I think we've probably got to say yes to that. So particularly with the injuries he's had. Do you know what I mean? And I think we buy him for like 48 million or something. So yeah, we're getting our money back.
It was a little less than that, I think.
Yeah, maybe it was.
Zinchenko was 27, and I can't remember, but I think he was a lot less than that. The listeners will correct us if we're right or wrong. But look, and I'm also one to say, okay, I can see both sides, right? So if you're talking 50 million, you sit at a table to have a conversation about that to see what it looks like. That's big money for a player who's coming back from another injury. But you've got to also bring in the right player who fits, culture wise. And it's getting harder and harder to do that. It's more competitive space now when it comes to bringing in players. Because Arteta's picky. It's not just about the talent on the pitch. It's about the profile and DNA of the player too, Dan.
100%.
45 million.
43 million to be exact, apparently. I've just looked on Transfer Market. So 50 million euros it was. And because I always do it in euros on Transfer Market. It's very bizarre, but there we go. 43 million pounds for Jesus. So if we're going to get more than that, you're going to accept it. not going to accept anything less than that, in my opinion. I still think he's got a great role to play. And I think in terms of a squad, there's no point. A lot of people get this. So it actually annoys me, actually. There's a lot of people that forget that when the last time we won the league, the two strikers sitting on our bench were Carnu and Wiltord. Like, can you imagine now? They'd be like, oh, what happens to... We're bringing in Henri. What happens to Carnu and Wiltord? No, they didn't. They went then, oh, brilliant. This is a squad now. And I think because it's been so long since we've had that, people forget. And some of them are too young to remember what our squad was back in the Invincible season. You forget how long ago that was now. You've got 18-year-old kids now supporting Arsenal that didn't see the Invincibles. They just heard about them. So they haven't been around to see that. And people are like, oh, my God, like, what does that mean for Gabriel Jesus if we buy a striker in? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, no, that's why you need the like for like, right? Then I think we only have that on the left. If you've spent the whole match going after Trossard, and then with 20 minutes to go, you're like, oh, geez, Martinelli's coming on. Stevie Nicol, Liverpool legend, said that to me. His biggest fear playing Arsenal was the flank players going forward, And he said, and he goes, I was a defender. If I'm a defender and I've been running my socks off in a game and I'm looking at the subs bench and then this kid comes on, you've killed me. You've killed my spirit, taken my soul. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's
coming from a legend as well, man. I mean, that's fair play. AFC Lemmy has come in with another super chat to say he's the easiest player to replace easily. Isak. Listen, I'd love Isak, but that's not happening this summer. That's not happening this summer. Trust me, I'd love it. I'm with you, 100%. My number one striker. He ain't gonna come. And Newcastle ain't gonna sell him. And even if they did, it isn't even going to cost 100 billion. It's going to cost like 150. So, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Are we talking real stuff or are we talking fantasy football? Because I did that with Tom, and you could put together quite a squad. But
absolutely.
Isak and he's injury prone. But look at his goal scoring record. Even though he hasn't played as many games, he's a great player. But he's not coming to Arsenal.
No, I agree with that. 100% I do. Listen, let's ask the question. It's a nice little segue. Strikers. Let me just ask you, is it going to happen or not, do you think, this summer? Are Arsenal going to go and get their number 9? Because Mikel Arteta's only bought Jesus, as a number 9. And I know he's saying that Havertz plays there now, but he came on a press conference where we have Havertz, who's a midfielder. So he was not a number 9 when he bought him. He played him in the 8 for half the season. So, I mean, it's crazy for me to say this, but we might go another window without getting a number 9, which will be 5 years behind one striker. That's crazy, isn't it?
It is, especially when you look at the strikers we've had in the past. It is. But I think if you look at the trust factor with Arteta again, Havertz is his guy. And early on last season, he tried to sell us on Havertz. But with every new signing, they've got to prove it to us as fans. Same thing with David Raya when he came in. He had to sell him on us. But David Raya won everyone's hearts that night at the Emirates when he saved those penalties against Porto in the Champions League. Havertz, I think, has earned the respect and trust of half Arsenal fans. I think he's one of the most polarizing Arsenal players ever. Some fans see it, some don't. But Arteta trusts him. And I think going into the season and for the majority of the season, Kai Havertz will be our number 9.
See, I believe that. And I said when we start the season, it'll be number 9. There's a lot of... My mum absolutely cannot stand Kai Havertz, bless her. She absolutely hates him, thinks he's no good at all, and wants a massive upgrade. There's some people that are a bit like me that are like, look, I wasn't a fan, but you know what? Back end of the season in the 9, I see what he did for us. 13 goals. You can't really sneeze at that. But at the same time, I can see why people are like, look, let's get an upgrade because like Havertz is good and let's keep him in the squad 100%. But let's use him more as our Olivier Giroud number 9 and let's go and get a proper one that can bang him in. So I kind of get that. So if I do, and Victor Gyökeres is being reported. Ivan Toney is available. Ollie Watkins, something that's not happened at the moment. Some people are calling for Dovbyk as well. It looks like he's now leaving from Girona. There's names being thrown out, but one thing I will say, there's not one that you go, wow, okay, go and get him because he's other than Isak. Do you know what I mean? Other than Isak. So I don't know where you're at with this one. I don't think we're going to get one, if I'm honest.
I
really
don't I don't either, and I also don't want to hear chatter though about we've seen like Martinelli has some injury issues. He's on the clock for me. Some people may not want to hear this, but this season he's a player. Talk about people saying Jesus has got to prove himself.
Yep, no, I'm with you.
Martinelli has to prove himself too. He had a poor season. Yes, he had some injuries, but he's not been magical, Martinelli, for quite some time. So, and he can't play in that position. He's not strong enough to play in that role. You know, I think Trossard's more effective on the left. What kind of player do we have that can step into that? Eddie's going to go. Is there someone among the ranks of the younger players that can come in? No. Havertz is a durable player, though. He's strong. His low sense of gravity as well is good. This is why I know some people think I'm crazy, but this is why I would go after a player who might be looking for a couple seasons of, last swan songs. And that's why I talked about with Barcelona's financial issues, them wanting Nico Williams, the De Jong situation, all of this stuff going on with them. Somehow, I don't know how they do it, with financials. But I would like to see someone like a Lewandowski come in. He is the player that can play in the Champions League if you need to. He's a player that can come on and be that Olivier Giroud option, a plan B. If you need to nick a goal at the end, he's strong in the air. He can score bangers inside the box, outside the box, brings a plethora of experience with him. He is a machine. If you think Ronaldo is fit, body-wise, look at Lewandowski. If you follow him on social media and his wife, eats clean, sleeps in a certain way so it doesn't affect his heart or his body. And his temperament and his the way he is in terms of profile DNA, I think he's perfect for Arteta. I think you go after that. Now, wages will be high, yes, of course. But if you want to win the league and you want to capitalize now before everybody else gets stronger, you go get a player like that. He can make a difference to our team. That's what I think. Proven.
Yeah, you said that on Tom's channel about Lewandowski at 35, 36. Look, for me, I kind of get where people are at in terms of if it ain't going to be Isak, we wait and we get him in the next summer. If he's available next summer, that is, because he might not even be available next summer. So I get what people say there. The only one I think that has legs, if I'm brutally honest, is Gyökeres. Now, he's a £100 million release clause, which is around about £84 million. They're saying they want as close to or the release clause. He scored 30 goals for Coventry. He actually got 50 goals and assists for Sporting Lisbon. Now, I know people will go, yeah, but Darwin Núñez did that for Benfica and look how rubbish he is. I get that. But it doesn't mean everybody from Portugal is going to be a Darwin Núñez, does it? Sometimes you've got to take a risk. This guy's got England experience. I know it was Coventry, but the Championship is a really good league, like competitive, physical, demanding. And he pretty much single-handedly got Coventry to a playoff final. He's banged them in for Sporting Lisbon and won them trophies. So for me, I don't think this would be a shocking one, Sophie. I don't. I know it would be a risk. I know it would. Sometimes, though, is it better to take a risk or is it better to just wait? Because I'm kind of done waiting, Soph. I've waited for long enough now. I don't want to be there going, oh, we waited because we thought we might have got Isak. But again, we're going to have to stick with Havertz, who gets 12 goals a year, because we're still waiting for Isak. Or Isak might not leave Newcastle for 5 years. So sometimes you've just got to go, let's go and get this guy now. Let's not stop mucking around and waiting all the time. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't know what your thoughts are on Gyökeres.
Let me ask you this.
Go on.
Did we lose the league last season because of lack of goals? Well, let me preface it by this. We did not lose the league last season because of our defense. Did we lose the league last season because of lack of goals, or did we lose the league last season because we didn't have enough cover in midfield?
I think there's arguments for both of those, and I'll tell you why. I think you're definitely right in midfield. We should have kept Granit Xhaka and added Declan Rice, not swapped them for both, in my opinion. Because as much as I wasn't a fan of Granit Xhaka, you don't move him from the last 2 years to how good he was at that left 8. And with Rice, Xhaka and Ødegaard, I think we would have potentially won the league. But I also look at it and I think if there's a striker in the position of Trossard or Havertz in that position against Villa, we win the league. If there's a striker or a killer in the box against West Ham, we don't lose to him at the Emirates. if there's a killer in the box against Fulham, we don't lose to them, or we definitely beat them at home. That's for sure. So I think you can kind of look at it as both, if I'm honest.
Mm.
And I don't sit there and believe that, oh my God, a striker is definitely what Arsenal need because we don't score goals, because that's stupid. We scored 91 goals. Our defense is good. We're talking about fine margins here, so do you know what I mean? It's not like with Manchester United who are, oh, a striker might get them into top 4. Like, this is really kind of like sort of fine margins here with Arsenal. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay. So I'll pivot, not double pivot. I'll pivot
Go
that
on.
question
Go on.
and say to you, Manchester City, the Holy Grail, the Champions League and the treble. What was the difference? What was the difference that took them over the edge?
So their treble winning season and last season, Man City.
Their treble winning season and last season. What took them over the edge, especially in the treble winning season? It was Haaland.
Yeah.
Haaland's goals.
Yeah.
The dude was scoring 10 hat-tricks in a season. Having a prolific striker is a major, major difference, right?
Yeah.
But the midfield, the connectivity between De Bruyne and Haaland, and we heard that over and over, magic, right? In fact, early on in Haaland's City career, he was taking up positions where the midfield weren't finding him. He could have scored a lot more goals. So those two areas, like you said, it's a symphony, right?
Yeah.
They've got to play the right notes together. And I think we had a little bit of that last season. And I think, again, people want Havertz to be this certain player, and he's not. And a little bit like Ozil, he's got that lazy vibe about him, but it doesn't mean he's a bad player. So, yeah, I mean, I think both are as important as each other in order to kind of, take it over the edge.
Listen, the last thing I want to ask you before we do close, because we're over an hour now, and I could sit and talk to you for longer, trust me, but we need to go and you need to go. There's definitely, for me, in my opinion, 4 players that we've sold. And I asked this, I think it was Northside or Judges. I've done so many streams now, I can't remember who the hell I was asking these questions to, but I'll ask it to you. There's 4 players that I quite liked at Arsenal, but I understood why they left, or one of them is actually still here. And I was cool with them leaving. If that's what they want to do, it's absolutely fine to sell players. I don't know that we've replaced them yet. And I want to ask if you agree with the 4 players that I'm going to mention. Okay. One of them is actually my mum has spoken about it. Aubameyang. Now, understand again, I'm not saying we should have kept these players. So if I'm saying that if you're going to get rid of them, we need to replace them. I don't think we've replaced 25 goal a season striker. I think that's fair to say. So Aubameyang is one of them. The other is Emi Martinez. Everybody was saying this guy is going to be a brilliant World Cup winning goalkeeper that is going to be Arsenal's new number 1. And it's so great to finally have a number 1. Then we have left back Kieran Tierney, who for me is defensively one of the best that we've got or has had in a long time. And the other one is Granit Xhaka, who for me for the last 2 seasons proved to be the best 8 that Arsenal have had in a long time. Now, I'm cool with getting rid of Xhaka. I'm cool with getting rid of Aubameyang because he turned up late for training. I'm cool with Kieran Tierney not fitting your system. And I'm cool with Emi Martinez not being the guy you want. But you have to replace those 4 positions, and we're still trying to. Now, David Raya, we've all heard about how him and Ramsdale were fighting over the position. I'm still not 100% convinced. People don't like me saying it, but I'm just going to be honest. I don't know that David Raya is the guy that I would go, yep, world-class, number 1 goalkeeper, David Seaman levels. Not for me. Left back, Kieran Tierney, big fan of him. Probably not one of the best left backs in the world by any means, but maybe Calafiori will come in and finally be that left back that replaces what I think has been a bit of a shambles of a position for most of Arteta's reign, if I'm honest with you, because no one's really held down that position. So can Calafiori do that? Hopefully. Left 8, we still don't know, but we think it might be Declan Rice to replace Granit Xhaka. If not, maybe Mikel Merino or somebody like that, or Fabian Ruiz. And then up top, we've spoken about Aubameyang being replaced because he has not been replaced by Jesus or Trossard or Havertz or Eddie or any of them. So that's what I think we need to get right this summer window. Like that, for me, are the 4 missing pieces of the puzzle now. Like those 4 positions, we're done. Like it's 4 signings and we're done, in my opinion.
Okay, so let's start. So we're already tossing Jurriën Timber aside, are we?
Well, no, we're not, because Calafiori's coming in, so I imagine he'll be the guy that comes in at left
We don't
back. I don't know.
we don't know if Calafiori is going to be the starter. We all assume, but that's not to say we haven't even seen Jurriën Timber play, really, right? So hopefully there's going to be competition in that position, and we know Calafiori can also play centre back, right? So I would say we actually have replaced Tierney, etc. It's just so happens that player got a serious injury and we didn't see it. So I do believe we did fix the left back position. Aubameyang wasn't late for just training. Aubameyang was late for the North London derby, and then he refused to warm down. And he was having problems. He couldn't find a goal with a map and a compass before he got drop kicked by Mikel Arteta.
It's true.
So I would say we went closer to winning the league without him than we did with him. So I think we've been just fine in that area. Have we gotten to the level and the heights of a striker that we want? No, fine. However, some people say, well, we won the FA Cup with him. Well, we won the FA Cup and we have the culture and the FA Cup, and he was playing his best football at that time, right? But if we're talking Premier League and being competitive, we got closer without him. I will agree with you on the midfield. I can't find an argument or debate on that because I believe that it's so important and we need to address that. And the goalkeeper, Ray has won the Golden Glove. You know, I wasn't for this, as you know. I was a Ramsdale girl. And, you know, Ramsdale for me was more than just a goalkeeper. He came in, he helped evolve the culture, the connectivity with the fans. He came in that season with Tomiyasu and Benjamin White, and I felt like he won us over. It will always be legendary, that performance at Tottenham, the fight with Richarlison. All of that made us fall in love with Ramsdale. But I have to be fair to David Raya. He came in, his mistakes, if you pick at them, there's 2 or 3. And I said earlier in the show, every player makes mistakes. But he generally came in, did a good job, and he won the Golden Glove. So for me, the midfield position is the one where I would agree with you on that front.
Love it. Love how you've broken that down as well. Listen, Soph, it's always a pleasure, man, speaking to you. It really is. Make sure you do me a favor, people. Click on the title, Highbury Squad. Go over, show some love, subscribe. They're so close to 16K. I hope they've hit it tonight by the time everybody catches up with this. Make sure you've liked and subscribed on this and over at Sophie's as well. Soph, enjoy yourself over there. I think you're going to have an absolute blast. I'm very, very jealous. And I imagine that you're looking very much forward to it, mate.
I am. Next season, you'll come out here, and with the video you've done for Manscaped, we'll set up some agent meetings in LA, get all Dan, Super Hollywood. So, yeah, if Arsenal come back out here next season, then it's a must. You've got to come, and we've got stuff to do.
I would absolutely love that. And I really wanted to come out this year, but it just wasn't going to happen this time. But maybe next time. Listen, it's been a pleasure. Make sure you do me a favor, people, and head over to Sophie. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. We've had 400 people watching here throughout most of the show, and we've just hit over 200. Let's make sure we get that up to 300, please, people. Thanks for all your super chats. Thanks for your interaction. Fantastic in the chat tonight. And listen, we'll see you next time. As always, up the Arsenal. Take it easy, people.
Yes, people, Manscaped is back. But this time, it's not for below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped brings to you the Beard Hedger, the best product on the market when it comes to beard trimmers. The Beard Hedger is unique due to its number of gradient settings. As someone who's purchased this, I won't turn to any other beard trimmer. Check it out for yourself at manscaped.com. And don't forget to use code FTM20 to get 20% off of this product.